Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing, but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast, such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. So thank you, Kelly, for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
So I know your story a little bit, obviously, from doing some research, and I think you're working in an area you're very passionate about. When it comes to women's health, and then specifically what we're going to talk about with hot flashes and things. But what was it about this area that like in your like beginning of your career or whatever, like what was it that triggered like this is where I want to go?
Well, my career was in the automotive industry for 30 plus years of running a business. And when I sold my business back in 2020, although I'm still involved on the board and different things, I had been really thinking about like, what is it that I should be doing? I had been doing some mission trips and doing some things like that, but I was like, God, what is it that you want me to do? Like, there's got to be something more to this. And so immediately you go back to like thinking it should be something in your industry or something like that. And I had been involved in a couple different documentaries. I was involved in Sound of Freedom. Cool. I'm involved in a documentary called Surpassing Sight, which we're just now getting put out, which is on reducing the unemployment of the blind from 70% to 7%.
Oh, wow.
And as I was talking with my friend Lucas Bankin from Sterling Light Productions, he's the one that has done and been involved in all of these. And I was talking to him, and we were talking about Surpassing Sight, and he said, I got to go. My wife, Catherine's getting her treatment done today. And I'm like, oh, goodness, I didn't know she was sick. And he's like, oh, no, she's not sick. Have I not told you about this documentary we're doing on this doctor? And I said, no. And he's like, oh, I've got to tell you. So he starts to tell me about a documentary that they're doing on how a stellate ganglion block treatment can help with PTSD, anxiety, so on and so forth. And I immediately became fascinated because my son is a fireman and struggles immensely with sleeping at night. Because of PTSD or, constant vigilance, hypervigilance of worrying about whether or not a call is going to come in, whether or not that same call is going to cause issues emotionally for him and so forth. And so immediately I was like, I've got to take my son and get this treatment after I learned about it. Well, in between the time that I had learned about it and my son getting the treatment, I had done a lot more research. And by the time my son got the treatment, I knew I was going to open a center to help more people in the Cleveland area, but really just anywhere. You can come in and get the treatment from anywhere. And as I was sitting there, learned about the fact that it helps with menopause. So I had been suffering for like 35 to 40 hot flashes a day, but really, really intense, I don't think men, no offense to you, but don't understand the intensity of like it starts in your belly and and some people will say it starts at the bottom of their legs and goes all the way up or wherever it is, but it's like an overwhelming intensity of this inferno that happens. I'm really lucky I didn't get the emotional side, like the anger and the like a lot of people can get really their emotions get all over the place, or they
Yeah.
become, really crying or weepy. I was pretty lucky I didn't have as much of that, or well,
Mhm.
I guess who knows, maybe I did and people were afraid to tell me. But I but the intensity, I remember standing at my company Chris holiday party,
Yeah.
and I was up doing a speech, and literally like it came over me, and there's nothing you can do. Like I had to stop, and everybody started laughing because I'm like fanning myself like this with
Yeah.
my notes, and I'm like, I am so sorry, I'm having the biggest hot flash, and everybody burst out laughing. But it's, had it not been my company and me setting up there, if I had been a guest speaker, like I don't
Right.
know how does that all
Yeah.
work out, but the overwhelming lack of control over what's happening in your body, and everybody would know, like they'd be like, I mean, like stripping down. I'm like having a hot flash and my whole
Right.
face is sweaty. So as soon as I found out about it, actually my girlfriend was reading Dr. Lipov's book and found out about it. And she called me in when I was sitting in the office. She's like, this helps hot flashes. And so as I learned about that, I scheduled my appointment right away. And it was funny because the treatment's very simple. You just get a
Mhm.
treatment on one side one day and then on the next the other.
Okay.
It's a stellate ganglion block treatment that's been done for 100 years. It's just being used in different ways now.
Right.
And the first 2 days felt like they were worse to me, and I said, I want my money back. Like this is
Oh,
actually
wow.
worse. But it just takes a few days for your body to heal and
Right.
adjust. And
Okay.
so I really have been down to like one or two a day. And if I get them, it's very light. Like I could
Mhm.
talk right through it with you, like if
Yeah.
I happen to have one. Very infrequently do I get woken up at night from hot flashes or night sweats where I was just drenching my
Yeah.
bed, which sounds a little bit, probably more than you need to know, but
Right.
it was like a lot, like just the hot flashes and the night sweats and all of that type of stuff. And I don't have hardly any of it. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so it's been great.
Well, and so like one of the things you touched on, which doesn't really, I mean, but the comfort level of who you were around when it happened, right? Like that's got to be something that makes people a little nervous. Like women that are having, especially if you know you're having hot flashes in that kind of regularity, like 40 a day, like I would
Yeah,
imagine they could come like at any time, just, back
it
and forth
was,
and just like to have that nervousness of like, okay, maybe I'm going to a dinner that don't really know these people. And so what do I do if I have one? Like
yeah.
that's got to
It
be,
happened. I mean, it happened to me a couple of times where you were out at dinners or you were doing something, and it's like you're sitting there trying to act like everything's normal
Mhm.
as you've got sweat bubbles going on your face, or you're trying to calm yourself down, or you're literally sitting there thinking, I've got to take this coat off. But
Right.
maybe you're in a business suit and it's not appropriate to do that or something.
Yeah.
So it's very unnerving. And I would say that it could probably I would say it probably caused me to really think through whether I was going to go to an event or not go to an
Mhm.
event at some points when it was really, really high. And I think that your body, as it's going through its normal cycle or thinking it should be going through its normal
Right.
cycle, that there are certain days that are just extremely intense, but you
Mhm.
don't know when those are because you're not having your normal
Right.
menstrual cycle.
Right.
So,
So and in that way, like you said, I mean, and it's something why I wanted to have you on because I can't relate to that. Like, like that I don't have anything that goes on that's like this could be out of the blue, like, whoa, wait, okay, maybe I need to turn around and go home. And like I don't want to go to this thing because I'm starting to have hot flashes. Especially if you're there, what do you do in like having those kinds of issues come up? Um, so
well, I've
like
I've had friends that have their shirts get completely drenched,
mhm,
so they'll only wear like a black like cardigan over
mhm,
the top of it or something, which makes it all the worse because now
right,
you're like draped in extra clothes
right,
to be able
right,
to block the fact that you just soaked through one of your shirts,
yeah,
So, I mean, it can be really embarrassing.
yeah. So to go back to like, okay, well, what is there like a specific cause as you've like obviously, if you're going to find something that's going to be the cure, right? Is it strictly just a hormonal thing that everybody has to go through, but some people go through it worse than others? Just it's just part of like their
Well, I
deal in
mean,
life, you know?
I have talked to some of my friends that are like, I was through it. Like, I didn't have any issues at all. I didn't
Mhm.
have any hot flashes. I didn't have any irritability. I didn't, but I mean, for those of us that I have a friend that's been having hot flashes for 20 some years
Oh,
just
well.
because that's her body. I mean,
Mhm.
not because she was going through menopause.
Yeah,
And, so obviously there's no rapid cure necessarily for menopause or hot flashes,
sure.
although in discovering how the stellate ganglion block can help because your sympathetic nerve does control the temperature regulation in your
Mhm.
body. And so by resetting your sympathetic nerve, it allows your body to reset that the temperature control of your body. Not
Yeah,
speaking as a doctor, I'm not a doctor, but
right.
my doctor could certainly tell you all the reasons why that happens.
Yeah,
By resetting that sympathetic nerve, and it not only does it help, the menopause, but it also helps any other depression,
right,
anxiety, PTSD, shame, grief. I mean, it's like so many different things. So you're usually solving a lot of things at once,
right.
not just the menopause systems or symptoms. But that I will tell you is the only thing. I tried the essential oils
Hmm.
on my on
Yep,
my wrists before bed. I put them underneath my nose. I dripped
right.
them all. The one day I put so many on, I couldn't even sleep because it was so strong. I was like, maybe if I put more, maybe I could
Right.
sleep tonight. But, it really is a problem. I have a friend that can't sleep any night because it's constant hot flashes all night
Yeah.
long. And, it's very disruptive. And when you don't get a good night's rest, really, I found that the nights that I didn't sleep really well, and I don't know if this is interrelated, but they were worse the next day. But
Right.
I know how much sleep, really, really helps people
Sure.
with anxiety, depression, all of the different things that when you have sleep. And I think I didn't realize how much it was impacting me with
Yeah.
the lack of sleep that I was getting.
Right. Well, I would imagine if the treatment is resetting the nerve and like calming the body in a way, which I would assume it's doing if it's also effective for all those other,
Mhm.
PTSD and all those other things, then I can see that connection between like, okay, well, if I'm not getting sleep, well then yeah, it's going to because that you're not allowing the body to naturally do that. So if you're not additionally adding the treatment to it, I can see how that compounds pretty easily and would even
Yeah,
be more frustrating, right? And then just the the outside of like the physical part of it, but just a added frustration that you're putting on yourself because it's like, oh,
right.
I'm having hot
Well,
flashes.
and
I can't even sleep.
anxiety because you don't know
Yeah.
when it's going to happen,
Yeah.
it's, my one of the ladies that used to work for me was going through menopause about 4 or 5 years before me, and we were very close, but she would sit across from me at the desk, and I had a fan in the corner of my room,
Hmm.
at the corner of my office, and she'd be like, I'll be right back. And she'd run over the fan, turn it on, and like lift up her shirt and stand there, and she'd
Yeah.
be like, all right, I'm all calmed down. But can you imagine, like, if you weren't working for me, like, that's not going to
Right.
work with a guy, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to run over there and do
Right.
that. So, I mean, it can be, it's really, yeah, it's challenging.
Oh, I can imagine. Um, and so, it for somebody that and you said somebody's going through them for multiple years, decades, in which I've heard that too, but like most people, it's centered around when they go through menopause.
Right.
Is there anything that somebody in their 20s or 30s could be like, okay, if you start doing these types of things, is it helping with relaxation? Is it helping with like depression, anxiety, addressing those things early? Does that sort of help as they get into it to reduce them, or is it again just there's
I
not
don't know
really
that
a
it's going to
correlation?
reduce it, but
Mhm.
if you have already, um, gotten in the habit of doing healthy things
Mhm.
for yourself, whenever you go into anything, eating correctly is, really super important. but I was reading through some of this stuff on the Cleveland Clinic. We're in Cleveland, so
Yeah.
we are in the backyard of one of the best, doctors in the world, all the
Yeah.
best doctors in the world. But, there was, showing that when you eat only when the sun is up,
Hmm.
and then you eat plenty of fruits and vegetables, that it helps normalize your blood flow. And so,
Hmm.
and that fiber can stabilize everything.
Right.
So, it's interesting because we are what we eat. I mean,
Hmm.
literally. And
Yeah.
so when you take the time to learn how to do it, I didn't do a good job of it. I
Hmm.
spent 25, 30 years working my tail off, not sleeping, eating whatever somebody put in front of me, just
Right.
going one right after another. Like it was, and so the sugar levels all over the place, my
Right.
weight was all over the place. And so I probably put myself into, going into menopause, even though I was starting to get healthier, like right around the time that I was starting menopause.
Hmm.
But I can imagine that if I had my body in a way that, it was normalized,
Right.
and not going through all these ups and downs, and not with high blood sugar levels and all the different things, that I would have had a lot better result.
Hmm.
But they were saying that women who followed like a Mediterranean diet is a good long-term solution, that they stated. But women who follow that were 20% less likely to experience his hot flash and night sweats.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but it's really the way we should be eating anyway, whether
Right.
or not
Right.
we're in menopause, whether we're 20, whether we're 50,
Yeah.
we should be eating healthy regardless. And many of us don't eat nearly as enough fruits and vegetables to
Right.
get by regard anyway.
Yeah.
And so if you're not taking really good supplements to go with it, now you're depleted in multiple areas. And, exercise is super important,
Yeah.
getting out. And I would say just walking, if you can at least walk, 5,000 steps before breakfast,
Hmm.
getting out there and, getting 10 to 15, I would say 12 to 15 if you were, in my eyes, 12
Yeah.
to 15,000 steps a day. But, you know, a, at least 5,000 of those consistent at a faster pace, not
Right.
just like roaming around because you stand all day for work, but
Right.
actually getting some exercise in. All of that puts you in a better mental state.
Hmm.
And then if you eat healthy, obviously the Cleveland Clinic says that it'll help. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't try it before I got
Right.
there. So I kind of threw myself into getting healthy after I realized how much
Yeah.
it was affecting me.
Yeah. Um, so like with the treatment, is it's not just a one-time thing, right? It's a
It is. It's yeah, the treatment is typically a one-time block. Sometimes with
okay.
menopause, you may need to do another one.
Hmm.
I did a second one only because when we were opening the center, the doctors needed some people to test the new machines on. So
Right.
I said, well, I'm still having a few. So sometimes with menopause, you may need more than one to
Mhm.
help regulate the body. And
Okay.
so I said, I still had a few. Let's see if it helps. It did help a little bit more. I went from, a couple of night sweats a week to really none now. Where, but I was so happy with where I was at compared to where I was, that
Yeah.
if I wasn't trying to open up a center to help more people, I probably wouldn't have gone back.
Right.
But some people could be worse off than I, or they adapt differently. I
Hmm.
also didn't have a lot of PTSD or
Hmm.
anxiety or depression going in. But the whole idea is that you're healing the
Right.
sympathetic nerve, or you're resetting the sympathetic nerve back to its original state. And so if you looked at a brain on a functional MRI at rest, on a normal person, it would look pretty yellow and green.
Hmm. Hmm.
You wouldn't see a lot of firing. If you look at that same functional MRI of a person at rest that has PTSD, maybe some traumatic instances, things like that, their brain is red in
Hmm.
areas even at a rest state. So not, I
Right.
mean, you're supposed to have a fight or flight when something bad's happening, right?
Right.
It gets you energy. You're not supposed to sit in that hypervigilant state, or
Right.
that overly cautious or depressed or anxious state all the time. And what they see is that they see that firing in the brain as if you were in a fight or flight, but you're not going through anything, you're at rest.
Yeah.
So what happens with the neurosympathetic reset is it resets the sympathetic system or the sympathetic nerves to allow those nerve endings to heal. So it
Gotcha.
allows that healing. So depending on where somebody comes in, let's say they're coming in from menopause and they're like me without a lot of firing already sitting in the brain. And I don't know why. I mean, I've been through enough that I should have had a lot of firing going on, but without that, and then you look at somebody with it, maybe they need more than one treatment just because they have a lot of nerve endings that need
Right.
healing in general. Or they may respond very well. We have some people that never have to have another treatment at all for any of it, and it helps all of it. Or, they come back 6 or 8 months later, and it just all depends on how they've healed.
Right.
And what they've done,
Yeah.
so meditation, exercise, mindfulness activities, talk therapy, all of that is super important. Like this isn't, even though I consider it like a miraculous shot, because people leave that have been stuck stuck in a frozen state, and they leave and they actually can feel emotion again.
Yeah.
So in 10 minutes, I mean, they can feel it.
Wow.
Like it's just amazing. But it doesn't mean that you don't still have to talk through
Right.
all the things that have gone on that got you to that state to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. You still have to do the dirty work.
Right.
It's just helping you get along, to get there a little bit faster, release some of that, maybe some of the stuff that's got you stuck.
Yeah. So really, I think the best way to describe it for me is, and again, I'm not a doctor, but this is my layman's terms. My doctor says that I've got it basically about right, is that, if I have a sympathetic nervous system and my brain is firing, when I get a thought or even like a hot flash, you know what I mean? And we get it up here, we don't know how to process it because it sits up in the frontal cortex of our brain and it just like fires.
Right.
So now what happens is when you reset it and you have a thought or you have a stressful event, you can go, okay, that's stressful, I need to do this. And you kind of put it in its compartment and you go on and you handle the situation, or you talk through it like a normal person. You don't blow up, you don't have a fight, you don't get angry. And so it allows you to process it, where before it just got there and it was stuck and it didn't know where to go. And so the therapists that we talk to, or the people that have gone through it afterward, they actually have much better therapy sessions because they can actually talk and process the same thing that they may have been stuck with for 10 years. I was at lunch yesterday with a therapist and she said, literally, I will talk to the same people for 10 years about the same thing and they cannot process it.
Right.
And she had a patient come in and get the treatment, and she hasn't seen the person yet, but she said, I cannot wait to see, because I know my son-in-law, his processing with his therapist, she's like, I've never seen anything like this. Like it was unbelievable, the change in him of being able to process it. So you just think that's what your body's going through, whether it's menopause, whether it's thoughts. I mean, it's allowing your body to regulate itself normally again.
Well, and that's huge. I mean, and to be able to have that kind of experience in a one treatment session is it. I mean, there's not a lot of things out there that can do that in a healthy, legal way.
Right.
I should say.
Yeah. Well, it's about 85% effective on anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
Yeah.
And you can take medicine and talk therapy and maybe get to 25 or 30% effective.
Yeah.
I didn't look up the stats on the effectiveness on menopause before we got on, related to it. But I would say this, that it's certainly a lot better than what we go through trying different things and, waiting for an effect. Now, like I said, I did have a couple of days that weren't great right up front, but ultimately it calmed it down and I'm back to being a human again. Now, I want to clarify one thing really fast, is that the treatment is 2 days. You do one on one day, one side, and one day on the next. So it's actually not all in one day, but it's pretty darn close.
Right. Well, but I mean, like, to be able to do that and then actually, get somewhere with, especially if you're thinking about somebody who's been in therapy, like you said, for years, talking about the same thing, can't get past it. Um, and I think of people with PTSD, but and like you said earlier, a police officer or firefighters that see something and they're nervous about, like, am I going to see that again because it caused me issues, after seeing that, like, to be able to it like and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not going to, like, get rid of the issue, but it's going to allow you to process the issue and be able to
Yeah,
deal with it.
you just said something, and ironically, I literally just posted a video of a gentleman that we treated last week, and he had been a fireman for many years,
Mhm.
retired, and now he sits on what they call a peer support team. But if something really bad happens,
Mhm.
that a call goes out, and like recently we had a woman in a parking lot take the life of a little baby
Mhm.
that she didn't know.
Mhm.
And so the police and fire went out, they were called to the scene for a stabbing, find out that it's this little 3-year-old.
Mhm.
And so immediately what this gentleman does and his team they go on scene
Right.
immediately and help the police and firemen that actually dealt with that particular instance. So if it's something
Yeah.
really traumatic, like, really bad, and so he not only saw it for 30 years, he's now going out and helping the
Right.
people that are suffering through this to
Mhm.
talk through the event quickly so that you don't internalize the event.
Right.
But, in that process, not only had he had 30 years of it, now he's reliving it. And then he
Mhm.
also teaches up and coming firemen. And so I just posted this testimonial video he sent me yesterday because it was so dramatic, or traumatic or impactful, I guess I would say. But he said, I was asked a question in class by an upcoming fireman. How do you deal with everything that you see?
Mhm.
And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you can see it on our YouTube channel. But he says, I normally would have thought of all of the experiences that I had, probably wouldn't have responded as calmly
Mhm.
and as detailed as I did. And he said, but I didn't realize how much calmer I responded until I left.
Yeah.
And then I thought back to the question and how it didn't bubble me up and
Mhm.
make me anxious for the rest of the day. Where normally explaining that to them would have sent me he
Right.
explains it better on the video, but
Yeah.
the whole idea that's what I mean by being able to process, like
Mhm.
being able to actually process that emotion, take the question in, not own it is something that's going on inside of you, but still be able to answer the question and
Yeah.
give really good feedback. So he thinks like him and his team, if he can get them all to get the treatment with him, he already got it, but
Yeah.
if he can get other people, think of how much more impactful they'll be when helping other
Right.
firemen and policemen.
Yeah.
So thought that was really neat.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can imagine that it allows you to, like you said, when he's answering the question, like, he may have, had he not had the treatment and it triggered something, he may not have wanted to go down that path or explain that, or and so
He
I think
said
it,
he
it opens
probably
up
would
the
have
doors.
answered it. He said he probably would have answered it when I talked to him later, but differently.
Mhm.
But more importantly, he would have went home in not a really
Right.
good mood. And
Yeah.
so it really impacts the rest of the family. We have another gentleman that we just did a Zoom interview with, him and his whole family. And he had been in the military, and then he was a corrections officer for 10 years. And now he's on permanent disability because of his PTSD
Yeah.
and anxiety. He can't even hardly leave the house. And his whole family came in with him, and the little boys, I think they're 9 and 7, and we'll be posting this. It's a Zoom, a Zoom meeting with the
Hmm.
whole family. But he said, I wanted my family to get on with you because I wanted you to hear it from them, the changes that I've had in the last 3 weeks. So he's 3 weeks post-treatment at the time that we talked to him. But his older son, 9 years old, the day after his first treatment, he said to him, I just have to ask, Daddy, are you going to be better now so that we
Hmm.
can have our daddy back.
Right.
And just think of the secondary post-traumatic stress that's being put
Right.
on the wife and the children. And so we believe that it's just as important for the family members to be able to get the treatment and the healing as well. Obviously, 7
Right.
and 9 is too young to have
Sure.
this done, but you know, there've been treated people as young as 12, but generally about 15 or 16 is about our cutoff. But
Okay.
um it's just amazing to think like the wife is just as traumatized as
Hmm.
he is, because she said, we walk around on eggshells. We don't
Right.
know what's going to set him off. And a lot of even spouses live in the same bedroom, obviously, and
Hmm.
the person that has the nightmare jumps up and grabs the person, or
Right.
thinks they're, you know, under attack, and then they grab. And so there's like that constant hypervigilance of this person that hasn't even experienced it, but now lives it.
Yeah.
So secondary, you know, and for you men dealing with us menopause women probably get as
Yeah.
much PTSD.
No, I mean,
Because,
that's where I'm going in my head. I'm like, yeah, I can
yeah,
see that is like, because I can imagine if you're, especially if you're having 40 hot flashes a day or more, and some of them are to that extreme level. And I live in Texas where like it's
you're
hot
already hot.
most of the time
Yeah.
already, right? Like, people are already scared of the heat. And it's like I can imagine that there is like a, oh nope, we've got to pause life, go wait till you cool down. Now we can go again. And however long that takes, it can be
Well, and
disruptive,
chances are in the extreme heat, I know for me, I wouldn't even put myself in
right?
situations where, and I, you know, thinking back now, you're really bringing something up, Jerry, is like, I was thinking, like, there were times that there were outdoor events that I
Hmm.
didn't go to and
Hmm.
I didn't participate in, because I knew not only was I already going to be miserable
Yeah,
anyway without any extra heat, but adding heat to it, or, you know, being that hot, I mean, just seems like sometimes you feel like you're really actually going to explode.
right.
And
Yeah,
so you're not going to put yourself in that situation. And so you
yeah.
miss out on events. But, you know, one of the things not talked about too often, that the hot flashes and that lack of temperature control in your body, is the irritability and,
Hmm.
you know, all of the things that go with it. And so a lot of people very either weepy or very angry,
Yeah.
and it could be still hormonal, but you know, when you're dealing with all of the hot flashes on top of it,
Hmm.
it's like that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah. Well, and then of course the disruption to the lifestyle, like whether it's going out to things or, and then it's, the stress on the family of, okay, well, mom can't go, or, or just as a spouse, if you're going to a dinner or whatever, it's like I can totally see that as being stressful and adding like the snowball just gets bigger of just the issues that are going on. Um, and so being able to find a treatment for that, um, is I mean, it's sort of a miraculous like healing process.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's
pretty
that's
cool.
so. So you mentioned, earlier you mentioned like that you had 40 and some of them were bad and some of them were not. And so it's not necessarily like for someone who's going through menopause, like they don't necessarily have to have massive hot flashes. It can be
Mm-mm.
just anything and it's going to be effective. It's not like a severity rating of like, okay, you qualify for this. Like
Yeah,
anybody
I
would be
mean,
able to see results.
yeah, I would say that obviously, just like with PTSD, anxiety, depression, um, it also helps long COVID symptoms. It
Mm,
helps ADHD, you know, a lot of things. So the more severe you are, the more you're going to notice that's changed, right?
right,
So, I
right.
mean, that's obviously the case, but the thing is that whether or not you're getting 5 or 6 a day that are super intense and 10 or 12 minor ones,
Mhm.
you know, or a couple, the not knowing when
Yeah,
is like not knowing when that one is going to
yeah,
happen, not knowing when I'm going to be on fire
right.
is a little bit stressful. But, you know, interestingly enough, men do have hot flashes. And so
Mm,
it's not just women. And especially if you've had any type of prostate
okay,
removal or things like that. So, I mean, it can happen to men as well. I mean, it's not
okay.
just women, but I don't know if it's ever been tested in men like it has women, but
Right.
it definitely, you guys aren't immune to it.
I didn't know that. Um, Interesting. So, and because it's not like, I mean, it's obviously it's a hormonal thing, which obviously men have hormones as well, and it's a nerve. It sounds like there's definitely a connection to the sympathetic nerve. Like obviously, if doing a treatment to that can, like, there's got to be some sort of connection there between hot flashes and what's going
Yeah,
on in the
and
nervous system.
yeah, on our website, Dr. Lowers, our treating physician, he talks a lot about it. He talks about menopause and what happens and
Mhm.
why the sympathetic nerve actually can help, by resetting that can actually help in menopause from a scientific level.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to pretend to be a doctor, but
Right.
I know it works because I've been through it. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, um, you know, a potential in a men, the testosterone continuing to drop over a period of time, but most of the time it is from or due to prostate cancer. But
Okay.
so many men nowadays are getting that type, prostate cancer
Right.
or things going on that that can happen.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. Well, I can imagine anything as we get more and more technology and able to test different things. I can imagine there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come out that are going to be like, hey, this offset, this puts your body out of balance and can trigger these things happening. And for whatever reason, some people get more severe than others.
yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that because we are getting ready to do a case study, and we're looking for people that have PTSD, anxiety, or depression
Mhm.
combined with bulimia or
Mm.
anorexia because we have seen, and one of them is my son-in-law,
Mhm.
have gone through the treatment. I didn't know he was bulimic. He never
Mhm.
told me.
Yeah.
And after the treatment, he said, I need you to know since 2009, have been throwing up after my meals. I ruined my esophagus. 2009 till now is a long time
It's a
to
long
be doing
time.
that,
Yeah.
right? And he said, I've ruined my esophagus, but I haven't had one episode since I had the treatment.
Wow.
And immediately I called the doctor and I said, do you know if this like works? And he said, I thought it might, but I
Mhm.
never knew for sure. And so we really want to do a study on, we'll have to get, 7 or 10 patients that
Right.
have that and then find 3 to really write a good case study on that would be willing to let us follow them. But it's interesting because what we don't know, it's helping, but this is 100-year-old treatment.
Right.
It's not new. It's
Yeah.
just been used for pain.
Yeah.
And then they found while using it for pain that these people actually did very well with PTSD symptoms. And then it was studied for menopause back in 2006. And so you start looking at like different things that you don't know. It's
Mhm.
kind of like not knowing whether or not something will work. It's developed because they think it's for weight loss and then they find out it
Right.
works for your heart or vice
Right.
versa.
Right.
And so it's ropivacaine. It's not, I mean, ropivacaine been around. It's used for epidurals. It's used
Right.
for all kinds of blocks,
Yeah.
pain blocks, that type of thing. It's not new. Somebody says, are you giving me a vaccine? I said, no, we're
Right.
not giving you a vaccine. It's just, all it is really, it's just, it's literally putting a nerve block in
Yeah.
to relieve the tension in that nerve or, the nerve, and then allow the nerve endings to heal.
Yeah.
That's it. And
Yeah.
so, and that's why sometimes you'll have to have it done again because I may be able to take ropivacaine in and it lasts 5 or 6 weeks. You may take it in, it may last you, and then how long does it take for all those nerve endings to heal?
Right.
And so
Right.
you might have to have it done again. But
Yeah.
in reality, like the price difference between talk therapy and doing this and having
Mhm.
like getting through something like this, I mean, night and day, very
Yeah.
inexpensive.
Yeah. And like, because it's been around so long, like that there, and I would imagine there's not like, it's not like you're going to do it and have this risk of like, oh well, we actually may double hot flashes. Like it's
Oh, no,
right.
yeah,
It's not like that's
I
not going to
mean,
be
I haven't seen that.
right.
That would be bad, but I mean,
Yeah.
there's no guarantee with any treatment of
Sure.
how anybody's going to respond. But really the side effects or the things that can happen are very, very minimal. We
Yeah.
do it in a very safe way. We do it under ultrasounded guidance. And
Oh,
so
cool.
they know exactly where they're putting the medicine
Yeah.
in the ropivacaine in before they do it. And then they actually push a little saline first to make
Hmm.
sure that they're in the right spot
Right.
before they push the ropivacaine. So that's like an extra step to do a saline
Hmm.
look first. But because they're doing it on an ultrasound, it used to be done blind, meaning not blind completely, but without ultrasound or x-ray. Then
Right.
it went to telephoral or x-ray. But even with x-ray, like I can take a picture, but you still don't know where that needle
Right.
is going, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is actually under ultrasound guidance.
Yeah.
And and they know exactly where they're putting it in C4 and C6 on
Yeah.
the right side and the left side. And that's blocking that temporarily. So you're going to have some side effects that we want to see. So you're going to have a droopy eye, which looks like what they call Horner syndrome.
Right.
And we always say the droopier, the better, the funnier you look, the better, because that means a really good block. That means we put the medicine in the right spot.
Yeah.
You're going to have some numbing to your face and
Hmm.
your side, just like you would if you went to the dentist and you got a local anesthetic. That numbing is actually not from the block. That numbing is from the numbing medicine they put on your neck to before they do the block.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Just like as if you were going to go get your tooth pulled,
Yeah.
they're going to numb you first. It's the same thing. So that numbing is actually coming from that and not even
Cool.
from the actual block. And then you get some hoarseness in your voice
Hmm.
and a little bit of congestion that you feel like you're getting a cold. And by the time you wake up the next morning, you're completely normal.
Oh,
So,
cool. Cool. Um, well, yeah, and I actually I've had an Achilles issue recently, and I had ultrasound guided injection to help
yep.
speed the healing
So you're
process, and
familiar.
so
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it. And like, yeah, I was like, okay, do you know where you're putting that needle? And he's like, yeah, put it right there because I'm looking at it first. And I was like, okay, good. Like,
It
and I
does
did
make you
it.
feel better. The
Yeah,
actual procedure takes 6 minutes. I mean, you're
yeah.
in our center for an hour and a half to 2 hours because we take you through a virtual reality, like a guided
Mhm.
meditation, calming type thing that we just do because we think it's really cool. And
Yeah.
most of our patients like it. It's called Firefly.
Mhm.
You can only do it in a clinical setting, but it's really to help with PTSD and
Mhm.
if you're getting ketamine or something like that. And
Right,
then, the prep of putting the IV in and all of that takes longer than the actual procedure. The
right.
procedure itself takes 6 or 7 minutes. So,
Yeah, yeah. Um, but no, but that, I mean, it's fascinating to me that that's available. Like, um, I mean, because it's to have that kind of reset, in your system. And one of the things I correlate that to is like, the wild animal that's on the safari that's trying to get away from whatever, they're in fight or flight, they're running for their lives. And when they actually get away, if they show it, a lot of times they do in the video, they're not like showing like, oh, he like shakes everything out and then just goes back to eating grass, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
I got away from predator, get back to life, and I'm
I
like,
like it. I think I'm going to use that.
if
I think
this
I'm
is
going to use
something that
that.
can do that for our system, because like
Yeah.
we're blocked, we can't do that. We're still scared he's going to come around the corner, like,
Right. Well, we
and
maintain that hypervigilance. We don't let
yeah,
it go. We don't have
yeah,
the ability to say, it's all done now, you
right.
know? Yeah.
And
So
that's,
the
yeah.
other thing that and I know that a lot of women can suffer pain, although I haven't really asked the doctor whether it can do, but the one thing that a lot of women are struggling with now, and I don't know why it's so prevalent, but with fibromyalgia and
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune disorders and pain
Right.
related to that, we
Yeah.
do know that it helps dramatically with chronic pain and
Okay.
fibromyalgia. And so, like, somebody may not have the rest of the symptoms, maybe anxiety or depression, but
Right.
they just may be in chronic pain. I had a friend do it that woke up every morning in like just intense chronic pain, and
Right.
she's like, I'm sleeping I'm getting up, I'm not in pain. And if I am in pain, it's so minor compared to what it was.
Yeah.
And to see that healing within, a day or two,
Wow.
considering what they've been through, trying to get rid of this chronic pain. And
Yeah.
that's super cool as well.
Yeah. Well, and so that brings up quite because I have a friend who's dealt with chronic pain. I've actually interviewed her before, and one of the things that she mentioned, which and I think I can correlate this with male doctors, is a female comes in and I'm having all these hot flashes, and like there there's got to be a disconnect there, right? Versus if it was a female doctor going, okay, I've lived through this, I understand what you're going through, like because, and I'm not trying to say that guys just don't get it, but like there's a difference between living it and understanding it and reading it in a book, or maybe having 100 patients that have had it. There's still going to be a little bit of a disconnect in that, like, okay, I've suffered through this, I understand.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think when you've been through it, the impact that you're going to make on somebody's life.
Mhm.
I mean, it's actually, my kids will be like, it's a lot nicer to be around you, because literally all we heard was, here it comes. Like, we'd be in
Oh
the middle of a
yeah.
card game and I'd be like, hold on one second, hot flash, hot flash. And, and they're like, do you have to announce it every time? And I said, it comes out before I even know it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, just because I'm like, I can't breathe, like
Yeah.
I can't think. Don't ask me. And like,
Right.
if we were playing, I don't know if you've ever played Nerds, but
Yeah.
it's a timed, I mean, not timed,
Yep.
but the faster you are, the better. You don't have
Yeah.
time for a hot flash.
Right.
So they would always like them when I got it then, because then they could beat me.
Right. Right. Of course. But yeah, I mean that kind of that spontaneity of it coming out, and because I my wife has had some, and she's just like, wait, Paul, I got to go get, like, I get some ice cubes, get something on my neck, I got to do
I gotta
something.
go put my head in the freezer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh, okay, we were having a conversation, but I can pause and come back to it. Like, hopefully we won't forget where we were, you know. But yeah, so I've lived through that, not at the 40 a day, thankfully.
Yeah.
But I know that it's definitely something that can affect your world, like, and not just the physical side of it. There's so many other parts of your life that it affects, as we've talked about. Um, so is this something that only y'all are doing? Is it something that other people are doing? Is it like,
No, well, it's not very common. So
right?
there's farther and fewer, places available to
Mhm.
do it. A couple things I would look at is like, how is the treatment being done?
Mhm.
Are they placing it in one or two spots? Are they doing it under ultrasound versus that? I think, as I shared, I sold my business. I didn't open this center to be like a major profit center.
Right.
I mean, obviously we need it to be profitable to keep the doors open,
Sure.
but really our team just wants to help people.
Mhm.
And whether it's menopause, but more importantly, the suicide rate in America just keeps climbing and climbing and
Right.
climbing, because the social anxiety, the depression, the anxiety, just general anxiety, let
Yeah.
alone all the social media pressure that is out there. And then you've got all the COVID,
Right.
after effects. You've got, people that went through some really tough times and haven't come out of it, in addition to all of our first responders, nurses,
Mhm.
teachers that go through
Right.
things. So we kind of set out on a mission to, number one, put it at a pretty affordable price. So we're about 1/3 less than most of our competitors in
Okay.
the arena. But then we also give a 20% off discount for all first responders, um, paramedics, EMTs,
Right.
policemen,
Right.
superintendents of schools, anybody employed at a school system, because the level of trauma that they go through on a daily basis. But the other thing is knowing that, I could treat my son, and he got treated in December,
Yeah.
and he's doing really great. But he could go back out on a call today. He's on shift today at
Mhm.
the fire department, and he could have a pretty intense situation happen,
Right.
where either he loses a teammate, or he could lose somebody that, or something bad, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Something bad can
Right.
happen. And so we know that they put themselves back out there, the military, everybody back out there over and over and over again. And so the chances of refiring or reigniting those nerves again is really high.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make it as like inexpensive as possible. And really, we're basically at about our cost when it comes down to treating first responders. And, you know, everybody that's listed on our site that's, you know, eligible to be treated at a discount. But
Yeah.
we wanted to do that because I think number one, we owe it to them. They go out there and
Right.
put themselves at risk every
Mhm.
single day for us. And I'm sure we've got a lot of people that'll say, so am I, why not
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
But we had to draw the line somewhere. So,
Right.
but anyway, it just is, it's pretty impactful to us, or pretty important to us, to impact the lives of those that generally will suffer. About 20%, I think it is, if I remember my son telling me, of firemen, once they retire, commit suicide
Oh,
because
wow.
the intensity of reliving all
Yeah.
of those events. They did have somebody commit suicide in their department in the
Hmm.
last couple of years. And so, I mean, it's just a lot. And
Yeah.
so we wanted to make sure that we were providing it at the most reasonable cost that we possibly could. And we even arranged with another partner to do like 15 months same as cash, because,
Right.
you know, any way that we could get it to them. We've also partnered with Erase PTSD Now, which is a nonprofit
Mhm.
organization, and they provide grants for people that can't afford to get the treatment,
Yeah.
but need the treatment. Now, obviously, it takes donors,
Sure.
so if anybody wants to donate to it, but it does generally go out to first responders, military, people like that, that
Yeah.
have had true PTSD related to what they've experienced in their fields.
Yeah.
But when the list is long, but you know, just depending upon, I mean, you may as well get on the list if you need
Right.
to do
Yeah.
it. And then if you get a big donation in, you can all of a sudden treat, you know, 75 or 100 people if
Right.
somebody is so gracious to give a donation. So, but we give back 5% of our proceeds back to them as well,
Awesome.
just so that we can help to treat more people.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what's the website? How can people follow you on social? What's the
Yeah.
biggest way to do that?
So we're all over social media, from Facebook to LinkedIn
Mhm.
to Instagram. So
Okay.
we're not on TikTok. I don't think we're really a TikTok type of company, but
Right.
maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know enough about TikTok. I'm a little bit
Yeah,
too
I don't
old.
either.
But and then they can go to the resetcenter.com. So
Okay.
resetcenter.com, the Reset Center. And you know, the super cool thing we didn't talk about is we give free mental health assessments. And so
Oh, cool.
anybody can go on and take it. And
Yeah.
it acts like a fitness tracker. So you know how you have your watch and it's going to
Mhm.
track your steps. Well, this will give you an assessment up front. It gives you an assessment on PTSD, anxiety, depression, ADHD, fatigue, and insomnia.
Okay.
And the cool thing is that it'll redeploy. If you don't get treatment, it'll redeploy in another week and you'll take it again, and then it'll do it another week. And then it starts to taper off, because
Yeah.
the idea is that obviously if you profile that you get the treatment, that neurosympathetic reset treatment or NSR, and then it starts to measure you, and the results are phenomenal. If you look on our website, down in the bottom right, there's a ticker, and it
Mhm.
shows like the percent of improvement of
Okay.
people from their baseline test to their next test, whenever that is. And just, I mean, sometimes they've scored like a 7 being really bad, like 0 being the worst, 100 being the best. They've scored like a 7, and now
Mhm.
they're scoring like an 80.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
like, I mean, that big of a difference.
Yeah.
And so that's free. So anybody
Cool.
can take that mental health assessment. And it's all like regulated PHQ-9, PCL-5, GAD-7, all of the, you know, general. We didn't make them up. They're
Right. Right.
they're the standard in measuring
Yeah.
anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
PTSD.
Yeah. Um, wow, that's awesome. So before we close up, is there anything that like you would offer to somebody who is, whether it's the hot flushes because of menopause or not because of menopause, or PTSD, anxiety, somebody that's out there just struggling with it and just can't seem to figure out what their next step is, like, what could you offer as a piece of advice?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I learned this even before I opened the center. I said, if somebody's really struggling with anxiety or pain, I said, what should they do first? Do they go to counseling? Obviously I would recommend always being with a counselor. I mean, I see somebody once a month just
Right.
for mental checkup, and I don't
Yeah.
consider myself in the category of needing it, but I go to a life coach, but
Mhm.
ultimately she's licensed as a therapist. So
Right.
life coach, therapist, whatever you want to
Right.
call it. But
Yeah.
I would say that, so what I was told by the doctor is, listen, this is what we don't know. Is the pain causing the anxiety, or is the anxiety causing the pain?
Hmm. Right.
And so by ruling out the ability of resetting your sympathetic system and letting it heal to see what it is you're really dealing with. And I thought, oh, that's really cool,
Yeah.
because then and it's so quick, and generally within 2 weeks, people have generally seen like a lot of the effect. Although my son-in-law 5, 6 months later is still seeing different effects, but
Yeah.
it may be just he didn't realize that they were happening, and they were,
Oh,
and then it
right.
just like happens.
Yeah.
But I would say that, definitely go on and get the assessment. But consider the neurosympathetic reset. It's over a period of time, much less expensive than what everybody's trying to do with medication and things
Right.
like that. My
Yeah.
girlfriend that got it done, that was in a completely frozen state, was on so much medicine.
Yeah.
And then they would give her one, and then it would interact with the other one, and
Hmm.
this would
Right.
happen, and then she'd shake, and then she couldn't sleep at night. And then, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was all these different things.
Right.
And so by doing this, now they've actually lowered her medicine dramatically. I mean, she's down to very, very little.
Yeah.
I think that, over a period of time, there was so much damage done from all the different drugs she was
Hmm.
on, that that part may not be curable, the
Right.
shaking,
Right.
but there's hope. In
Yeah.
in the past, we thought PTSD was a disorder
Right.
and not at all treatable. And there's a website, an organization out there called It's PTSI
Mhm.
.org, and they are rallying with Washington, trying to get the name changed to destigmatize PTSI to not being a disorder, but being an injury that
Oh,
can be.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so if you think of it and you know that you can help this injury, which is this firing of the brain, and you can
Yeah.
heal the nerves, think of how much more we can do. I mean, obviously healthcare, or, drug companies don't like that because they
Right.
want the money.
Right.
But ultimately it would cost us as consumers so much less.
Right. Well, that's awesome. And that's what I'm all for, is like, how, it may cost you money to be able to find a better cure, better avenue to go. But like you said, the damage of being on chronic medication for years is sometimes, even if that cure comes out in 5 years from now, that's like, oh, now we figured out the cure for this disease or that disease or whatever it is. But the damage you put your body through for 5 years of medication to get to that point, if there's a way to avoid that, it may be more expensive right now, but it's far less expensive and far less damaging to your body long term.
Yeah, I have a really quick story on that, not related to this treatment at all, but I had fallen down, and I was hiking and fell down and hurt my shoulder
Mhm.
2 years ago. And I've been battling with this, and the insurance company said, well, you need to go to get an x-ray first.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. I went and got an x-ray. Then they said, you need to go to physical therapy. Fine. I went to physical therapy. That didn't work. The physical therapist said, you need an MRI. They said, not until you have an electrode scan to see if
Mhm.
your nerves are firing. So I went and I had the electrode scan. That was fine. Then they said, well, now you need to do needle therapy and massage. So I went and I did needle therapy and massage. So I went through 6 different things before they would give me an $800 MRI to save this $800
Right.
MRI cost. I said, how much more did you spend? All of it,
Right.
which, I didn't help me at all. And my friend said, Kelly, you could have just gone and paid for the MRI,
Right.
$800. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like, and I had been through like 9 months, and I
Yeah.
mean, it's just so crazy. Sometimes we do all these things because we're told to by the insurance company. And the doctor says, I would never make you do all of this. Like, I can tell you, I need to see what you tore so I know what I can help. And, you know, 'cause she said she would have had me do physical therapy first, but after that, if the physical therapist says it's not working, she wouldn't have put me back through all the other things. So I think it's interesting, like how many hoops we go through in insurance, all to save us money, which ultimately don't save us anything if we just went ahead and gotten the treatment right up front, you know? So.
Yep. Very true. So Kelly, I want to thank you for being a guest. Thank you for your time. It's been great. I've learned a ton. And so I know that my audience has as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. You're doing great work.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.